Hello, welcome to Theater of the Cosmos Coffee. Grab yourself a nice cup of warm brew. We are going to have some fun today. I had planned to do a video earlier than this, but when I recorded it, I sounded like a demented chipmunk. So I've upgraded my equipment and we're going to try again. Today, we're going to talk about a signal that is claimed to have been evidence of alien life, and whether it actually is evidence of alien life. So, as the New York Post here proclaims, a NASA filmmaker claims evidence of alien life could be revealed within the next month. And this was about a month ago. So far, I haven't heard anything. I think the original article is here in the Daily Mail. Evidence of alien life could be revealed next month as NASA filmmaker claims we found it. Similar title here from Quantum Zeitgeist. I'm not as familiar with this website. But the so-called NASA filmmaker, well, so-called, I guess he is a NASA filmmaker, is this guy here, Professor Simon Holland from the UK. He has a video here talking about this. This would be the kind of guy that you would expect to be the one that talks about aliens. Of course, people might say that about me, too. But anyways, we are going to look at what the claim is and whether it's actually true or not. So the claim here, so I guess he told the Mirror. Okay, not the Daily Mail, the Mirror here last week. Two groups are vying to publish. I'm not so sure. So there's this breakthrough listen project that is being done by the Europeans. It's similar to the American SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Just looking for signals out there that are evidence of alien life. So, um, you know, typically, think about the movie Contact, or the typical SETI is we want to find a message from aliens that says, "Hey, we're here." Um, Whereas this is more of a let's look and see if we can find kind of a garbage signal that would indicate alien life is there. So they call it a what was it, techno. Oh, what is the term? I just went blank on it. Techno signature here, um, which basically means like it would be aliens picking up our static, or if you're familiar with the movie Contact, they get some of the first transmissions from Earth, which happened to be the Olympics in Germany in the late 1930s. So what we're looking for, I'm not looking for, but what these astronomers are looking for is for a narrow band, because typically radio signals in nature tend to be on the wider band. It's usually a larger, like a black body spectrum that's much more spread out. So looking for a narrow band that would be indicative of possibly an intelligence behind the signal. They're also looking for it being close to a nearby star, and then also they're looking for a Doppler shift, which means it would be connected to a planet orbiting that star. So Doppler shift um, is in sound is when you hear an ambulance go by and the pitch starts high and then drops low. Uh, Light does the same thing. So as it's coming towards us, the light shifts towards the blue end of the spectrum, the blue end of the rainbow. If it's moving away, it's going to shift towards the red end, red shift and blue shift, if you've heard those terms. Um, and so those are a couple things they expected to see. Well, um, so you have this organization called um, the Breakthrough Listen, and they found a candidate. So I was teasing that here. So they found a candidate. So this red line shows where Proxima Centauri was in the data. Um, and then here, this yellow line is their signal. And so they picked this up, I want to say in 2020. Does it give the date here? I don't see the date. April 2019. In the Parkes Telescope in Australia. There's an interesting story this reminds me of here in a little bit. That also deals with the Parkes Telescope. So they picked this signal up. It looks like a nice strong signal. They said, "Okay, wow, what do we got here? Let's analyze it." So they called it BLC1 for Breakthrough Listen Candidate number 1. Apparently there were 5 candidates. I don't know what happened to the rest, but this seems to be the one that captured everyone's attention. So it had a shift in frequency. Doppler shift. You noticed in the picture before, it wasn't exactly lined up with Proxima Centauri, which is what it brings up. It's a little bit out of alignment. The Doppler shift wasn't quite where we know there's a planet around Proxima Centauri. But they detected this signal during 30 hours of observations. Okay, so that's cool. And so there were some papers published. So there were 2 that coincided together on the 25th of October in 2021. So radio techno signature search towards Proxima Centauri resulting in a signal of interest. They said, "Oh, we got something interesting." What? Even in the abstract here, the signal characteristics broadly consistent with hypothesized technosignatures, as well as compelling candidates to date, but ultimately they attribute it to being an unusual but locally generated form of interference. And this other paper kind of gets into the details of that. So, is it a technosignature? Yes. Is it from Proxima Centauri? No, it's actually from Earth. So, in this second paper, they analyze it much closer and conclude that it is not an extraterrestrial technosignature, but some kind of electronically drifting intermodulation product of local time varying interferers aligned with the observing cadence. So that's a lot of jargon there. I don't think they know exactly what it is. But they say they find dozens of incidences of radio interference similar to BLC1, um, and it seems to be harmonically related to common clock oscillators. So most clocks are, or a lot of your most accurate clocks use vibrations, and so there might be harmonics that this is detecting. If I understand it right, they didn't find what the signal actually was, but ultimately they concluded it was not extraterrestrial. Here's that full paper. They actually came back and did more observations, tried to redetect the signal, and could not. So, in the scientific method, it should be reproducible. If it's a technosignature, it should be detectable again. You know, we're talking about static garbage signals that would just kind of be put off by technology. So it's not something that we would expect to blink on and off. It's not like a "hi, here we are" signal that, you know, the movie Contact and SETI tends to look for. So there was also the Breakthrough Listen did another big search of nearby galaxies, which turned up nothing as well. This paper was from a little less than a year ago. So what I don't understand is why back here a month ago, all of this, October 14th, all this becomes a big deal again. Other than it reminds me of something. So back when I was in grad school, in 2003, yes, August 27th, 2003. I don't know if you were around, if you remember this, but basically it was this big hubbub that Mars was going to be closer to Earth than it had been in 60,000 years. And there were these emails and these articles saying Mars will appear as bright as or as large as the full moon. Okay. As bright as and as large as are two different things. Mars was going to be as bright as the full moon, not as large as the full moon. If you look up in the sky and you see Mars as large as the full moon, hug your family, kiss them, tell them how much you love them, and get ready to see the end of the world. Because one, how did Mars get so close so fast? Probably not a good answer. And we're about to have a major collision. Okay. I remember, this. So there was that hoax in 2003, but then for years, actually decades, I think this article is from 2016. Yeah. This is from 2016. So 13 years later, emails and articles were still being circulated every August. It just kept repeating. I remember getting an email from my grandfather asking about it. And it was like, well, okay. No. Mars is going to be, this happened years ago. Mars was going to be as bright as the moon. It was never going to be as big as the moon. Now, it was an amazing sight. At the time in grad school, I had access to a 41-inch telescope. I rigged up a little eyepiece, put a little wire in there. I was actually able, with my eyes, to see the two moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. That was awesome. But Mars was not as big as the full moon. Also, it made me think of this story which happens to actually be at the Parkes Observatory there in Australia as well. Um, it was shortly after fast radio bursts were discovered. One of the astronomers went back and looked through their um, their previous data to see if they could find some, and they found all sorts of these things. They called them peritons. Um, or it's the name of a fast radio burst, but they found all of these signals. So it was in 2007 when that first one's found. They have all of these signals between 1998 and it kept going until 2015. Um, but there was a clue that this wasn't everything wasn't what it appeared to be, because these were, it didn't matter where the radio telescope was pointed. Wherever it was pointed in the sky, they got these signals. And if I remember right from the story I've heard, it was at about the same time every day. It was just like, what is going on? Um, and then in 2015, what they figured out was it was their microwave oven down in the break room. What was happening was somebody was opening the door before the microwave finished, and that gave this little burst of microwaves, which is right there next to radio frequency. I'm not sure how close that was to the frequency they were looking at. 2.5 gigahertz. Um, but it turned out this was not something from space, but it was something from right there in the break room. So Sky and Telescope has this nice little summary article about it. So what? So what is my point? So my point is, one, I don't know why this is resurfaced today, but it makes me feel like the whole Mars hoax thing. Um, what is the signal? Probably something locally we just haven't figured out yet. They seem to think it's related to clocks because it seems to be a harmonic of the vibrations that run accurate clocks. That could be, who knows. Um, but I always want to bring this back to the Christian faith and creationism if it applies. Well, it's aliens, right? So how is a Christian going to react if in fact it was aliens? Would this be the end of the Christian faith if it was actually aliens? If this crazy haired filmmaker is right? Um, Got Questions has a nice little article here. Um, no, it wouldn't be the end of faith. There'd be some questions we'd have to answer. There'd be some thinking to do, but it wouldn't be the end of faith. So, as a young Earth creationist, I tend to believe aliens in the traditional extraterrestrial beings that evolved on another planet, that have gained technological superiority to come visit us. In that sense, I don't believe they exist. Could there be life on other planets? Maybe. Maybe plant life, animal life. I don't think intelligent life. And here's why. We know from the Bible that when Adam and Eve sinned, all of creation was subjected to some sort of a consequence. Why was that? Because God placed Adam and Eve in charge of his creation. And when they rebelled against God, creation, because it was subject to Adam and Eve, felt the repercussions. Just like when a leader of a country makes bad choices, all of the people suffer in that country. So, what does that have to do with aliens? Well, if there were intelligent life forms on other planets, then they would also be subject to those consequences. So either they are unjustly subject to the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin if they're equal to Adam and Eve, or they would have to sin at the exact same moment as Adam and Eve. Neither one of those solutions really sits well with me, but they're possible. Or maybe there's something else that happened that we haven't even thought of. So it wouldn't be the end of faith, but there would be some thinking to do. But in general, I don't believe there are other extraterrestrial beings out there with intelligence. There might be other life forms on other planets, but not intelligent beings like human beings. Another whole aspect is being created in the image of God, which is why we see Adam and Eve as the pinnacle of creation, as being put in charge of creation. So there's that. There are, I've got another article here. Do Christians believe in aliens? This is from Anchor Church. I have no idea what Anchor Church is, what they believe. I just saw this article, and it's a good summary of what different Christian leaders think. You know, some people think there must be lots of intelligent beings. You know, Billy Graham did. Okay. Let's see. Mark Clark, I'm not familiar with him, but he's agnostic. You know, that's a valid point of view. The Bible doesn't teach us that aliens exist. It doesn't teach us that they don't exist. It really isn't that concerning when it comes to faith. Some people call it godless chatter. I don't think it's a foolish and stupid argument. I think it's something we need to talk about, think about, because it challenges our thinking. But I don't think it's foolish to talk about it. Apparently, C.S. Lewis, I mean, he wrote a space trilogy, so obviously he's going to think in there. But in his space trilogy, Earth is kind of cordoned off from the rest of the universe because of the fall of Adam and Eve. And so there are things happening on Earth that aren't happening out in the rest of the universe. But he also had a more medieval view of the heavens. It's interesting. If you haven't read his space trilogy, do it. You have to kind of disconnect from reality a little bit. It took me a while to overcome that because, you know, the first one, I'm not giving anything away. He goes to Mars. There's all sorts of life on Mars. But he wrote it back when everyone was seeing all these canals on Mars, and there was all this thought that Mars was teeming with life. So, again, that probably skewed his view as well. Anything else? It's not likely. So, we've covered most of it. So, there's a whole other issues like the Drake equation, the Fermi paradox that we could talk about when it comes to aliens. But I think this is already long enough as it is. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening. I hope to do these more regularly. Getting all the kinks worked out. So I hope to talk to you soon. And until then, keep looking up.